What is the worst date that you have ever been on, chat? Because I guarantee you, my worst date story is worse than yours. And not only is my worst date story worse than yours, it's not close. I met a girl on Tinder this last summer, and she's a little bit older than me. We went and we got ramen because there's a cute little ramen spot here in Kansas City that I really like to go to. So we get ramen, and our first date actually pretty fucking solid. We had been talking for about like 2 or 3 weeks before we went on our first date, so like we were like pretty familiar with each other, but like actually like meeting each other in person, it was kind of a big deal. But things were just like, I don't know, it was good. We clicked, we vibed really well. We ended up going to a bar after, and we just like got drinks, did the do whatever. We didn't do the we didn't hook up. We just like did the first date thing. Sorry. And then end of the night comes. We went on like a fucking Tuesday or something, so we both had work in the morning because we're idiots. Actually, she had work in the morning. I was off because summer, but she had work. So we go home at like 10, 11. Neither of us drive, so she calls an Uber. I went to go give her a kiss, but she already had her mask on. But so like we hugged, and it was kind of weird. Kept talking. Things kept being good, and then like out of nowhere, she just like kind of ghosts me. And I was like, all right, this is weird. Like a week later, she's like, hey, sorry about the ghosting. Things have just been like really, really stressful, really bad. And was just like cool and like adult and like openly like communicated, which is like a good sign for a relationship. I was like, all right, this isn't that bad. And then we ended up FaceTiming for like 4 hours, and we ended up like watching Hercules, and it was just like really cute and cool. And I was like, you know what? Despite the couple of red flags, the fact that like she's like an adult and like in therapy and like is like actually working on some issues, maybe we got something here. So we go on our second date because it had been about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks since our first date. We'd been still snapping every day. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And she's like, I'm just going to this concert that I'm promoting for. And she's like, hey, or I'm like, hey, I could be at this concert. And he was like, no way, are you for real? I was like, yeah, sure. So I bought tickets to some fucking, was it Claude Von Stroke, some fucking EDM dude I'd never heard of before. And I'm not an EDMer. Like my fucking fit was so bad. I had like some fucking like black like sweatpants capris, and then I had like a giraffe shirt that has like a neon giraffe on it, and then I had a fanny pack that Rachel brought over for me, and then I wore my bang hat, I think, and I was like, fucking cool. But yeah, so I had like this fucking like really cringe outfit, but I sent her a pic on Snap. She was like, nah, we're looking good. And so the concert started at what, like 8 or 9, and I called my Uber to be there at the time. And then she was like, oh yeah, no, we're girls. We're going to show up like an hour and a half late. So I was like, all right, cool. So I get dropped off at the venue, find a bar that's nearby, and I just go to the bar. I got hit on instantly. Like as soon as I walk in the bar, some dude sitting next to me, he's like, hey, I really like that fanny pack. It's pretty hot. I'm like, hey, thanks. And then we ended up talking about like soccer or some shit. He thought someone was dead, like some famous actor who just wasn't. Keith David. He thought Keith David was dead for some reason. I was like, I'm like fairly certain Keith David's alive. So we're at the bar. We did a toast to Keith David for being alive. And then it's like 9:30 at this point. Concert started at 9, and I get a snap from the girl, and she's like, hey, we're on our way. I'm like, okay, cool. So I walk to the venue, and then I hang out for like another like 15-20 minutes. But she finally shows up. Her and her friends, we all get in the venue, and then like literally instantly frame one, her friend that she showed up with is like, hey, I have to go to the bathroom. I'm fucking dying. So while we wait for her friend to stop dying, I actually run into a couple of my friends I play Yu-Gi-Oh with. I'm hanging out with the Yu-Gi-Oh guys while she's like taking care of her friend. Her friend comes out. She's like, all right, cool. Everything's fine. We start making our way into the crowd. And then like her friend is just like hunched over next to the trash can. It's like we have like medical come over and like check on her like, hey, is everything okay? So her and her friend, they go to medical. I'm just hanging out at a fucking EDM show. Sober, by the way, because I got sober. I'm drunk. I don't do like any sort of like LSD, acid, Molly, anything like that. It's not really my cup of tea. So I'm just sitting there, kind of vibing. Music's average. I don't know. I get bored. So I go find the Yu-Gi-Oh guys again. And then on our way back in, I walk past who I think is the girl with her arms around some other dude. I'm like, nah, it's probably fine. And then about like 10 minutes later, she shows back up. She's like, hey, friend's doing okay now. She, in the time since she went to go take her friend to medical, is now on Molly. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. So we're in the crowd. We're basically like on the front of the crowd. We're grinded, making out a little bit, a little more going on. We're having like some really good times. And then she needs to go outside for something. So we start to make our way to the back, and a dude stops to talk to her. And she kind of like just like freezes up, gets like really like anxious, and just like walks off. And I like walk with her. I was like, hey, what the fuck was that? And she was like, oh, that's like my ex that I told you about on our first date. She has like a VX that like is like the worst ex she's ever had. And so we run into him. And I'm like, oh shit, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, no, I'm doing good. And then we like made out some more so she could like get her mind off it. I was like, hey, like it's not the best scenario to be, but I'm mad that we're here. And then show lets out, and we're like, cool, let's go to an after party at the bar down the down the road. I'm like, all right, cool. First and foremost, none of us have any cash to get in, and they only accept cash, not accepting credit cards or anything. Her friend goes, talks to the guy, lets us all in. pretty cool. And at this point, I would like to just clarify that like women using their sex appeal to get things from men, I am 100% for it. Men are fucking stupid. They deserve to be taken care of. If you are hot and can flaunt it and use that to your advantage, you should be able to do so. I am not going to like sit here and slut shame anything like that. So we're in the bar, we get some drinks, and then she is looking for gum or a cigarette, one of the two. And so she like starts flirting with this guy, gets his number, and like reaches over and like kisses him a little bit. I was like, hey, I'm like, you know, we're here like together, I thought, you know, because like we're not like dating or anything, but like, you know, if we're like out together, I would like to like act like we're together. But she like gets gum or whatever the fuck she was trying to get, and then she goes to like do it a second time, and me being, I don't know, fucking like not like alpha male, but like being like, hey, please stop making out with other people, I kind of like grabbed the back of her hair and like pulled back a little bit, like trying to be all like sexy like, and then I started like make out with her to like, you know, like assert my dominance to the dude who was trying to make a move. And I was like, hey, you know, if you could not do that anymore, that'd be cool. She's like, yeah, no, that's fine. Like literally 10 minutes later, it does it again. She's like so drunk and like so off the molly at this point, like she's like completely incoherent. I'm like, cool, this is where this night ends pretty much. Like, even if we end up going home together, nothing's gonna happen. I do not feel comfortable in this situation. But instead, we decided to go to an after party after the bar closes, like 2 a.m. at this point. We pay $40 for an Uber up to a fucking gated community in Gladstone to go meet up with her friend who is dying, left after the concert, didn't come to the bar with us. She went to like some party up in Gladstone. I'm like, fucking sure, why not? We get to the house, and it's like torrential raining at this point. In the time it took us to drive from Westport up to Gladstone, torrential downpour. So we're like, fucking cool. So we like run inside. The owner, he's super chill. He's a Raiders fan, which you love to see a Raiders fan out in KC. Not a whole lot of us out here. So he's got like Raiders gear on deck. I have to piss so bad. I had to piss like since the bar. So I get there, I go piss. By the time it takes me to piss and come out, she has now done 2 lines of coke on top of her Molly, on top of her being drunk. So I'm like, I'm babysitting at this point is what I'm doing. Because like while we were waiting for the Uber to get there in Westport, she walked up to like 3 or 4 different cars like, hey, are you my Uber? And like tried to get in the car with people. I'm like, hey, let's not do that. This is how like things happen. So I have to like, I'm like babysitting at this point. And we get her to her friend. And I'm like, cool, I'll hang out. You know, these people seem pretty chill. So I'm like talking, and then she runs into like some hefty dude who, and they're sitting there, they're talking. She brings up the fact that she saw her ex. He's like, oh, you saw him? That's crazy. So I'm like, oh, cool, they knew each other. It's chill. And I get a drink at this point. We're talking about like bands or some shit. And the hefty dude is like, hey, I'm gonna go smoke on the porch. And girl goes out to smoke with him. I'm like, all right, cool. It is what it is. About, I don't know, 20-30 minutes later, I realized like they're not back yet. I'm like, all right, what the fuck? So I see the owner of the house head out to the balcony. I was like, all right, cool. I will accompany the owner of the house on the balcony, see what's what. You know, I'm tired of like talking to people I don't know. I fucking get out there. They are fucking on the balcony. Like she's got her leg up over the fucking like railing of the balcony, and the dude is just like fucking like going away at it. And I'm just like, oh, okay. What the fuck? This is why like I failed. I was there to babysit, and then I did not appropriately babysit. The host, the owner of the house, he's apologizing. He walked out. They were both like heavy breathing, and I'm just like, all right, cool. So I went back inside. I talked to her friend, the one that was dying at the start of the story. I was like, all right, so like, if I were to call an Uber to leave, do I have to like get outside the gate myself, or if I could like call them to me, do they know how to get inside the gate? And they're like, yeah, you probably want to go outside the gate. So I'm like, cool. I fist bump the host. I'm like, yeah, it's been a pleasure. I dip out before she comes back inside. I'm in the Uber. It was only $20 to get home, thankfully, instead of the $40 it took me to fucking get here. But we're in the Uber on the way home, and I get a snap from girl. And she's fucking like, hey, it sucks you had to leave early. I really wanted to like, you know, hang out a little more. I wish I could see you. Like, we should hang out again sometime. Because again, like, she is so fucked up. I don't even think she realized what has happened and like what is going on. And like while she's talking, her friend is like, hey, who you stabbed? She's like, oh, Vincent. And then her friend just like turns and like looks like super like big-eyed into the fucking camera, like, I cannot believe this bitch is snapping you right now. I am so sorry. And then I'm talking to my Uber driver about what is happening, about how the girl I was on a date with ended up fucking some dude at this party that we ended up going to. And I'm like, yeah, so this is pretty awful. And then the next morning, I get a snap, and she's like, hey, sorry, I feel like I acted like a little bit of an ass last night. I'm so sorry you had to put up with that. And I was like, that's one way to put it. And I was like, you know, I know you seem chill and all. I really like hanging out with you. I get that like you're super fucked up, and I don't think that you made the decisions you made consciously. But that being said, I still want to like not associate with you after this. And she was like, yeah, no, that's fair. And then she blocked me. So, RIP for her. She was super hot. Would have been nice to have gotten laid out of our like 2 months of effort that we put in. But you know, sometimes that's just not the way it shakes out, chat. Hope she's doing well.